I am your host, Nicole Will, and we're so happy you're here as we navigate the world with your aging loved one. We are here to come alongside older adults, family members, and the senior living community as we explore the world of aging and elder care with helpful resources, informative interviews, and approachable conversation. We get to do this together, so join us on our journey, and this is the willGather podcast. At one point or another, we know someone that has used an assistive device for mobility issues. Whether it's our age, our body mechanics are changing, we've had a surgery, we are recovering from a fall, and walkers can play a major role as we are maintaining our pride, our dignity, and our independence and helping us stay safe. Why have they not been redesigned until now? Every other consumer product has evolved. Today, I interviewed Jeremy Knopow. He is the co-founder of Motivo. They have created a company that has brought forth change in the walker industry, bringing thoughtful design, functionality, dignity, independence to our older adults. Today, we are encouraging families and older adults that use walkers or are looking to use walkers. We are having a bigger conversation about why these products have not been reinvented for so long, and the call to designers and creators to look at what can we do to reinvent products for our older adults, create new products to provide solutions to problems that we're having, and a personal story that he shares on what led him to create Motivo. And there's a special gift for our listeners at the end of our conversation you don't want to miss. Here is my interview with Jeremy. Hi, Jeremy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so happy that you're here.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Nicole.
Yeah, you have an extensive design and mechanical engineering background, and you decided to start your own company and also redesign mobility aids. But you have a really important reason behind that. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, well, my father had a battle with ALS, my late father, and he had to use a lot of these products, obviously, over the course of that. And I just, particularly as a product designer, I just felt almost embarrassed that there wasn't something better out there that I could give him than what was available. And so yeah, I left my 25 years of pretty cushy corporate design job to see if I could fulfill a promise that I made to him about making products better for the next round of folks like him that have to use these sorts of things.
Yeah, did you find that when you were going through that, obviously there were a lot of challenges and frustrations. Was he frustrated also by the ability to not use products that worked really well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my dad was a painter, quite an accomplished painter with works in museums around the world. He was a professor of painting for over 35 years. And he was an avid tinkerer. He was always building like his own frames and in his own studio. So he definitely paid attention to the form and function of things.
Mm-hmm.
And he very much saw that the stuff that he had to use looked and felt like it came out of the 1940s in some cases, and that's because in a lot of cases it kind of did, and it hasn't changed much since then. And my grandmother, I should say as well, my grandmother was a very stylish lady, always dressing very nicely and modern, and she had at some point had to use a walker as well. And she had the old-fashioned walker with the tennis balls because that's what they gave her at the hospital. And she wouldn't even use it in her own home.
Mm.
And as a result of that, she ended up having a fall and never got out of the hospital because she just didn't even want to use that old-fashioned walker in her own home with nobody else watching. But even then, she still felt embarrassed to use it.
We do. I feel like too our attitude and our view on things is can be encouraged or like disencouraged by the things surrounding us that are
For
helpful, and that like I like things that look nice, right? We want to feel like that dignity piece. I think that's a big part of it too.
It's a huge part of it. I mean, there's a reason that there's form and function, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason we're not all driving black Model T cars, right? Model T Fords. People like different things, and
Mm-hmm.
different things speak to different people. And like I said, that's the beauty of us all being different creatures. And for many, many years, it's still going on today, this industry has been engineering devices for medical conditions as opposed to designing products for people.
Right.
Those are two very different things.
Yes.
I mean, if we're only dealing with robots that we had to
Mm-hmm.
fix, you could make one thing and they'd all be happy. But we're
Mm-hmm.
not all robots. We
Mm.
like different things.
Yeah.
We like to express ourselves. We like, obviously, pride and dignity doesn't go away just because we get older. And you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, what I feel that we're trying to provide is independence and pride and dignity. And the product, our Motivo Tour in this case, is just literally and figuratively
Mm-hmm.
the way to deliver that. But at the end of the day, it's about independence and dignity and pride, and however we can help enable that.
Yeah, it is. And we're going to get into like a lot of those reasons too, and the backstory of why you've decided to redesign this and put some thoughtful design into the product. But first, can you tell us, what is your company? What do you do?
Sure. Well, our company is Motivo, as you said. We started about 10 years ago. Jennifer Harris and I co-founded the company. We're both, by background, professional product designers. I've worked for lots of other big companies designing new products and new businesses. I was at Kohler and Procter and Gamble and SC Johnson and Fiskars, and so lots of big branded, customer focused companies that I learned a lot of great skills from and got a lot of good exposure to how the process of how you figure out what people want in a product and bring it to market. And so Motivo started, a little over almost 10 years ago next month, when Jennifer and I both decided it was about the right time in our life if we were ever going to make the leap from corporate America after 20 some years and do something on our own. It was the right time, just where we were with our separate families. And she also had family members that had to use these kinds of products as well. So it made sense from a business standpoint. We all know about the growing population of aging adults, including myself. And but it's also, just as important to us. We both had a passion around wanting to make something better for our parents and everybody else's parents.
I just admire your tenacity to step into a field and a demographic that needs thoughtfulness behind it to redesign products. We're going to talk about that as well. There's a lot of things that happen as we age that lead to older adults and us needing to use adaptive equipment and devices. What are some of those things that lead us to needing to use a walker?
Sure. Well, I mean, the number one thing, depending on which study you read and survey you read, really comes down to arthritis of one form or another. As we age, we develop arthritis in our spine, or discs get compressed for various reasons, and we need some extra support, or it becomes painful without some support. So arthritis in general as a bucket is certainly a number one reason that people can use a walker. Oftentimes, people have some other injury, perhaps to their hip or a knee, whether it was acute or long term, and they need that additional stability or support for needing a walker or any other type of mobility device. Ultimately, we would love for people to use our product for some period of time and then not ever have to use it again because they get better.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have folks who, after using a tour for a while, because they're able to walk more upright than they are with traditional rolling walkers, start building back up those core muscles that they weren't using when they were leaning hunched over with the old style walkers.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's actually a nice thing to hear when someone says, you know what, I don't actually need your product anymore.
Yeah.
Because we were able to help them strengthen those muscles and stability to the point where they could move away from a walker, which, ideally no one wants to have to use one their whole life. In some cases, people do. And if you do have to use a walker, then you might as well, and you're going to use it every day,
Mm-hmm.
and you might as well have one that's up to date and allows you to do the things you want to do on your own, and works within your lifestyle, as opposed to just something that you're sort of forced to adapt to. It works out much better, I think, when the product is designed for your need, as opposed to you having to compromise for its.
one thing that I really appreciated, not one thing, there are many things I appreciated about the design of your walker. I thought it took into account so many different features that are needed. Can you go through and tell us what some of those are? Because I think it speaks to why people use a walker, the different mobility issues, and having that alignment, being able to have the quality of life that they once
Yeah.
had. You were really thoughtful in deciding what to include in the design.
Well, the number one thing, and as a Jen and I, product designers, our lifeblood starts and ends with feedback from consumers,
Mm-hmm.
and to figure out what should we be designing. We don't know until we go out and talk to people. So we spent the first 2 years just talking to users of walkers, caregivers of people who use walkers, physical therapists, doctors, spinal surgeons, the whole ecosystem around mobility products to find out, if you started with a blank slate to design the ideal mobility product, what would that be? And the things that they came back with, number one was, I don't want to be hunched over.
Mm-hmm.
That's the number one fear that people have about using a walker. And it's understandable because of the way that every other rolling walker is designed, with a fixed seat that's right where you should be standing. You can't help but push the thing in front of you. And by pushing it in front of you, people end up being hunched over. So that ability to walk inside and upright, like you're supposed to, like your doctors want you to, was the number one thing we had to design around. Now, the tricky part to that is people also still do want to have a seat sometimes, to take a rest and sit down. So we had to figure out, how do you make that seat easily disappear when you're walking upright and getting close to things, but then also be right at hand when you need it and easily flip down. So a lot of the architecture, a lot of the way the Motivo Tour is designed is to accommodate that ability to walk inside and upright when you want to, and then have a seat when you need it. So that there's a lot of the design decisions were based around that.
Mm-hmm.
Besides that, we also found that there was some basic everyday use features that were not present in other rollators, kind of common sense sort of things. One was storage that was actually at a convenient height and that you didn't have to empty or remove when you folded up your walker. Most other rolling walkers, the storage is under the seat,
Mm-hmm.
or it's in a basket out front, and neither of which is convenient to get at, particularly if you have to bend over to get it, or you have to get up off your seat to get it. And then when you go to put it in the car, you either got to take the basket off or you got to empty it out in order to fold it up. That makes no sense at all to me as a product designer, right? You want to put your stuff in storage, and then when you fold it up, it stays in there. It goes in your car. You don't empty out your car every time you go to use it and park it, right?
Right.
You shouldn't be emptying out your walker every time.
Yeah.
So convenient storage that was at a convenient height. You don't have to empty and remove. And then the last kind of sort of no-brainer feature that you just wonder, why has it not been there for so long, is a basic tray and cup holders. A place that you can carry a plate of food and a coffee mug, or even a wine glass. We designed it so that you can put stemware in there if you want.
The best.
But just to be able to make your own food and carry it where you want to without having to rely on somebody else was such a big boost to someone's pride and dignity, or even better, being able to make something for themselves and their spouse and being able to bring that into the dining room or kitchen room without asking for help. It seems like a small thing, a cup holder and a tray, right? But when you integrate it into the walker, it enables them to do so many more things independently, and really is a boost, again, back to that pride and independence that ultimately we're trying to design. So from a functional standpoint, those were kind of the key things, walking upright, having convenient storage, having the tray and cup holders that we designed around. And then the flip side, on the form side, we wanted to create something that didn't look like it belonged in a hospital. We wanted something where, and like we talked about earlier, it imbued pride and dignity, versus taking that away that some of these more hospital-looking, medical-looking devices do. In short, we wanted something where even if you didn't need a walker, you might see a Motivo Tour going down the street and be like, that's kind of cool. I kind of want one of those, even though I don't need it.
Yeah.
Like And we've heard from our customers that they've actually had those experiences from teenagers, nonetheless, stopping them on the street and asking them what that thing is and how telling them how cool it is.
Yeah.
And it's got to be one of the first times ever in recorded history that a teenager told somebody how cool their walker was.
Exactly.
And
Highest compliment.
and you just imagine the boost of pride that that person felt, and kind of wanting to show it off. We have
Hmm.
people. There's a woman I was talking to today who goes on cruises with her Motivo tour, and she's actually gotten up and given several talks, like to the
Oh,
whole cruise ship, about
that's
her tour
amazing.
because so many people were asking her about it. She decided, you know what, let's just make this easier. And I'm just going to get up and give a whole talk about it, and she's done that on multiple cruises.
Oh,
Um,
that's the
so
best
so
word of
that's
mouth.
that's fantastic that we're
Hmm.
able to create something that from a form standpoint as well is actually making people feel better about themselves versus worse.
And those features, we think of them, you mentioned, those little features of like holding a cup, right? It doesn't seem like that big of a deal from the outside looking in, but it's such a big deal when you consider the safety of trying
Yeah.
to cross the room or move from your kitchen to sit down on your couch, and you're juggling and you're maybe then pushing your walker with one arm and you're not seeing what's happening. And just the safety of those little thoughtful features can really save someone from a fall. And I think too, when something looks nice and you're proud of it, you're more willing to use it every day. And so that in and of itself is going to keep people safe because they're not going to leave it at home or not walk with it, or all of those things that I've seen happen a million times when I've worked
Yeah.
in the senior living community, for
I mean,
sure.
that's exactly right. I mean, no assistive device can help you at all if you don't want to use it, if you're
Right.
not using it, if it's not there when you need it. One of the other things about walking inside the tour and upright is it also allows you to get a lot closer to a sink or a countertop. You're only a few inches away versus with a traditional rollator that's got that fixed seat.
Mm-hmm.
You have to either reach over it,
Yeah.
which is painful and most people won't do, or what ends up happening more often than not is people will push their rollator off to the side. Now they've got no fall prevention around them,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're reaching for that coffee mug or the sink or whatever. So with the tour, you can roll right up to the sink, right up to your cabinet and reach something, and you always have the tour around you as support in case you need it or in case you find yourself a little bit off balance.
Mm-hmm.
So that fall prevention side is a big feature of it. And to your point about carrying a hot cup of coffee, I can't tell you how like nervous I get when I see somebody trying to balance that mug of coffee on a seat of their walker that they're pushing, and just how it's actually a pretty good circus trick that they can do that.
Right.
Um, but you shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
Just put a cup holder on the thing at a normal height that has a
Yeah.
little notch for a coffee mug handle, and you don't have to worry about spilling 130-degree hot coffee onto your lap, right?
Right.
So,
It is quite impressive. I've seen so many tricks of people managing their walkers. And that's to your point, they don't have to. We had a conversation a little bit ago, and you had shared with me the story of the original walker, which I did not know. And I found it really fascinating. I would love for you to tell us what that is and how we're even at that point.
yeah, well, I mean, the original walker that most people think of, the metal tubular walker with the tennis balls on it. That basic design goes back to World War One, and it was intended to be a rehabilitation device for wounded soldiers as they were rehabilitating in hospitals around the world. It was never really intended to leave the hospital. Just over the years, it's kind of crept out of the hospitals and into mainstream use, and for really a occasions that it was never intended for. I mean, that's why the wheels are so tiny and it's got the glides because it's designed for a hospital floor,
Yeah.
right? Which it works fine on. But if you want to carry anything or do anything else in your life besides walk around a hospital, that original design is not very well intended. But because of Medicare and because of some other, the way the market is set up, it's this weird price fixed market, or at least it was for many, many years, where that product basically got stuck in a time capsule for the last, almost 80 years now, and hasn't changed. And there's been no incentive for the companies that make those to innovate them, because they were going to get X amount of dollars from Medicare, regardless of what the thing looked like or what improvements they made. So there was no incentive for them to innovate. So they just made the cheapest possible version that would get a Medicare reimbursement. And that's why now pretty much all the walkers in the world come out of a few factories in China, and they all look very similar. And we're the only walker company actually making walkers in the US. But yeah, they're stuck in that time capsule. So, and then somewhere around in the 1970s, a creative woman in Sweden, I believe, decided that, what, she wanted a place to sit down with her walker. So, and she wanted to take it outside. So she put some bigger wheels on it. She put a seat on it. And then she was able, that was sort of the birth of the modern rollator, as we talk about rolling walkers, the thing with bigger wheels and a seat and brakes. And that was all fine and good, and it did what she wanted. But the problem is she put that seat right in the place that you're supposed to be standing.
Yeah.
And that led us to all the way up to today, where we still have that basic design with a fixed seat right in the way where you're supposed to be standing, and preventing you from walking upright. And again, that was the number one design feature that we worked with the tour, which was allowing you to walk inside and upright, but then have a seat when you need it.
Every other consumer product has evolved. Why are
Yeah.
we delayed in our industry here with older adults?
It's like I said, it's been kind of a price fixed market.
Mm-hmm.
Every other consumer product you think about is sort of subject to, basic capitalist, consumer demand, right? The better products win and move forward, and the products that aren't so good fall by the wayside. But in this case, because the price was fixed, the reimbursement was fixed, and people were being given the product in an environment versus sort of having a choice of what to
Right.
choose.
Yeah.
Except there was no incentive really for companies to innovate. They basically just kept making the same thing for many, many years and making it cheaper for them so their profits could be a little bit bigger, but the same basic criteria. And people kind of put up with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of it is people didn't realize that there could be anything better.
Yeah.
And a lot of our outreach right now is just letting people know that, what, you don't have to settle for that 1970s or that 1940s style walker. There is something better out there, despite like I said, the time capsule that various market forces have created for this industry.
There is not choice. When I think of walkers, I see two, which is the one we talked about from World War One, that
Yeah,
style, and the
yeah,
roller walker. Those are the two that are primarily used, and I think people just are given that option and not understanding that they actually don't need to settle for the status quo on that, and to demand that there are products that are much, much better to use for a lot of different reasons.
absolutely. I mean, and sort of the greatest generation. I mean, the World War veterans.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those folks were also brought up to kind of take what you were given and be happy with it, and not speak up too loud about it, which is a credit to their humbleness, right?
Yeah.
And they had, that generation certainly had to put up with a lot more than my generation has had to. And so, to some degree, they were willing to put up with, okay, this is what my doctor gave me. I'm not going to complain. I'm just going to deal with it. But as the boomer generation is getting older and needing these kind of products, they understand that they don't have to settle. I mean, they're the ones that have fueled growths of companies like Apple and Tesla and Eliza. They understand that things, don't have to be just rudimentary. They can be both. They can work well and look good at the same time, and they're free to ask for that and vote for that with their pocketbook. And so I think the change in that, the demographic as well, is helping fuel more and more people looking for better solutions than just settling with whatever their hospital gave them out of the supply cabinet.
You're right. And with your experience working for those big companies that you did, seeing the innovation that's happening, you know what's possible, what businesses are capable of, and shifting that into looking at what can we do to reinvent products for older adults. And you took that lens and then brought it into the space that we're in now. When we talk about modern design, what's your call to other designers or entrepreneurs as they're looking at products and creating change in this space that's really needed? How can we make this better? I mean, the walker hadn't been reinvented for so long. There's got to be so
Yeah.
many other products we could say, hey, we don't have to accept this as it is.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've been teaching as an adjunct professor now for almost 12 years at the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, and I teach second semester senior designers about how to take an idea and turn it into a business. And I talk to them about exactly this thing that you just said. Why them? Why should they be the ones to do this? And the thing is, designers and engineers and makers and scientists of all sorts, whatever medium you are passionate about and you're skilled in, you have the opportunity to improve the quality of life of somebody using that skill if you just go out and look for those needs. And they're around us everywhere. And for me, my skill set, which is around designing products and engineering products, I always kind of had this nagging need in the back of my head that, hey, if this is the talents that God gave me, I owe it to the planet to try and make the most of it. So I've tried to take on problems that I think can have a more lasting impact than just another widget, in the landfill. And so I would put the call out to every person out there, whether you're in business or in design or engineering or science, anything, you have a skill set that can make a difference if you just kind of look around you at the needs that people have and things that haven't changed. And I can speak to designers in particular. Designers have a unique skill set in that we are the ones that often translate users' needs into a physical product. We're often the first ones that take that input from a user and put it into an actionable recipe, what we call design criteria. And once we distill it down into that, then it makes it digestible by the industrial complex at large to take that recipe then and then run with it and turn it into a product and turn it into a business. So I would definitely encourage all designers out there to look at your skill set as you're really kind of the front line of making a lot of these problems digestible for everybody else when you're talking about products in particular or experiences. And so all of you designers out there who might be listening or parents of designers, talk to them about going out in the world and looking for opportunities that they can apply those skill sets, because they have them, even if they don't realize it, but they have that ability to translate user needs into real solutions.
So true. We have ideas. We can think of, okay, I might be able to see that there's a problem here, but I don't know how to translate that and make it a tangible solution, right? So we need people.
Well, you're doing it with your podcast,
I
right?
am, yes.
There was a need for
Right.
caregivers to get more information about how to best provide for their loved ones or for the people themselves who are using these kinds of products.
Yeah.
And you created a solution to that problem.
Yeah.
And those solutions don't necessarily need to be physical things. Oftentimes they're apps, or they're a podcast, or they're a document, or they're a process. And it's all about what's the most appropriate form of solution for the problem at hand, whatever that may be. So we can all be designers in our own world and expertise.
I like that. Thank you. Thank you for that. And it's just encouraging to know that there are so many good people like you that are out there that are making changes for our older adults, because they deserve that.
I absolutely agree. thank you.
Well, I'm excited to see what you guys do next. What
Mhm.
is the future for Motivo?
Well, I mean, right now we just spent the last year and a few $1 million building up our manufacturing capacity to be able to keep up with demand.
Mm.
In the last few years, every time we ran a TV commercial or ad, we'd break the call center, literally. We'd overrun the call center or our website, and we just would run out of product. So we're just now at the point now with our whole new manufacturing process and partners where we can actually make enough product now to keep up. So that's a big change.
Yeah.
And now with that capability, as I said, in the beginning, anything that helps people live more independently and grow older a little bit better is fair game for
Mm-hmm.
us. And so we have a whole, roadmap of products and opportunities that we think can help people, like I said, have a little bit more pride, a little bit more dignity, a little bit more form and function
Mm-hmm.
in their products that help them get along better as they age, as we all age.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well, and it
so yeah,
shows, it tells you you're in the right space when those call centers break, the great need that there, the great
yeah,
need that there is, that people
yeah.
are like, finally something that looks good and works really well is here.
It's absolutely the case. I mean, we didn't really know exactly what would happen, and I think the call centers and the people we worked with didn't really know what to expect because there hadn't been these many kind of products like this out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think even to the point where, I mean, that's why they were understaffed. They didn't think there'd be the response that there was, and now we're probably going to end up using most of the call center capability in the U.S. just to try to keep up with the demand and that we get from our customers, as well as senior living communities and rehab chains and rehab
Mm-hmm.
facilities and hospitals that are also now seeing the product and looking to get their own fleet in for their communities or their facilities.
So, one big challenge for families and older adults is wanting to find products that can fit into their life and in their budget. And
Yep.
you have a way to make this accessible for people financially. Can you share with us how that works?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we knew that you know wanting to make the product in the U.S. and the reason we wanted to make the product in the U.S. was in order to have that steady stream of innovation and refinement into the product. You kind of have to keep it close to the vest.
Yeah.
As soon as we start making it overseas in China, the ability for us to innovate gets hampered quite a bit, and that timeline stretches out a lot. So as a relatively young company in the grand scheme of things, we wanted to make it in the US, but we also knew that was going to make our product more expensive than the walkers, that are being made at $1.50 an hour, when obviously we have to pay our workers, and we do pay our workers a much better living wage than that. So it makes our product more expensive.
Yeah.
It's just the reality of making something in the US versus overseas. But to help offset that, we offer payment plans as low as $29 a month. So at 0% interest. So it's not like we're trying to make money off of it, but just to make it accessible to people. And we absorb the interest that the bank charges us for offering that payment plan. But we felt like it was important to be able to make the product accessible for folks that we know are on a fixed income. And as a result, we've seen that our customer base is not just the super wealthy. Our average customer is the average customer. The
Mm-hmm.
average household income of our customer matches up pretty much dead even with the average household income of the U.S. senior base. So it seems like that payment plan has really helped a lot, and I'm glad we were able to do that. Our accountants probably don't love it, and our finance people probably don't love it,
Right.
but I felt like it was important to do because otherwise you're not really solving the problem if you just make this beautiful thing up on the hill and no one can afford it except for the
Yeah.
super rich. So that's how we tackled being able to make it in the U.S. but still making it accessible, is with these 0% finance plans that we're basically funding.
Really good options. And there's a lot of talk about for purpose companies where
Mhm.
you know that you want to buy products because there's a bigger purpose and you value their mission. And so that people are choosing to spend their money in ways that have a greater meaning.
Well, I mean, there's no reason. I mean, you can't do well and do good at
Yeah,
the same time,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And and of course, people have a choice of where they want to spend the money. And I think you're right. I think more and more people want to know the story behind
Mm-hmm.
the product that they're buying,
Mm-hmm.
where it came from and why. And through interviews like this, hopefully people understand a little bit more about where Motivo came from. And we really did come out of a what we felt was a sort of a calling to create something better for our parents and for everybody else's parents. And but I appreciate the question, and hopefully through this interview and going on our website, people can find out more about us and enjoy a much more up to date mobility experience
Right.
than maybe what they've had in the past.
Yeah, it's about time, and we're going to share your website as well. But people can also, can they submit to their private insurance company? And sometimes they do offer reimbursement for products.
Yeah, yes, for sure. So we were actually asked by the dealers who sell some of these products sometimes not to code it for Medicare because the Medicare reimbursement now is so low for a walker at 30 some dollars for a rolling walker. They said it's just not worth it when you're dealing with a higher priced walker like ours. Um, and the amount of paperwork and hassle they have to go through, they lose money on that. So they're like, you know what? Just don't code it for Medicare so we can sell it like any other product. And it makes it a lot easier for them to do it that way. So we did not code it for Medicare. But what we found is a lot of private insurance companies are refunding their customers, reimbursing their customers for the cost of the tour, either in part or in full, including some very large health insurance companies. One of note is interesting that the NFL is reimbursing in full the tour for their retired players because of the unique benefits of allowing them to walk more upright and the convenience features. And that's what we see is that the PTs and the doctors, once they see the tour or they get a brochure about it, that ability to walk inside and upright is a medical reason for them to write a prescription specifically for the tour. And with that prescription, it also becomes a lot easier for folks to get that reimbursement. Like I said, oftentimes for the full amount, and you don't have to deal with Medicare.
Which can be a big hassle sometimes.
It is, and like I said, it's $30 anyway,
Yeah,
and you're only able to use that once every 5 years. So if you were
right.
given a walker at some point anyway, you wouldn't be eligible for it anyhow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm so happy that you guys have figured out a way to make it really accessible and doable for people. It's been so wonderful to get to know you and your mission and your story and your company. We are going to keep our eyes open to see what else is redesigned and reinvented in such a great way from you. Can you tell us where can people find more information out about you guys?
Sure. I mean, the best place to go to find out more about the Motivo Tour is www.buymotivo.com. That's buymotivo.com. And for your listeners, we set up a special promotional code that's willGather 100 to save $100 off of their order. So again, that's buymotivo.com, and the promo code is willgather 100.
Thank you so, so much. And we will include all of that information also in our episode description that our listeners can find and stay in touch with you and what you're up to. So, Jeremy, thank you for the great conversation.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Nicole. Thank you so much for making this information accessible to all of your listeners.
Thank you. And now, time for an ad break. So, I have to tell you about my friend Jimmy Zolo and his new company, Joe and Bella. Our paths had crossed, and I'm so glad that they did. Jimmy is passionate about older adults. He told me that after both of his grandparents moved into a care community, his family's world has turned upside down, and they really became caregivers overnight. As you know, being a caregiver to someone close to you can be overwhelming, and there's so much to manage, like making sure your loved one has all of the products they need, keeping things stocked when things run out. And Jimmy's family also had that same problem. They were scrolling through all of these product reviews online unsure what would be the best to purchase, it can be really time consuming and frustrating, and he wished there was a simpler way to shop for his grandparents. Jimmy decided to launch his own business to solve this problem. He founded Joe and Bella to make shopping for older adults simple. They carry everything from comfy shoes to creative gifts, even toiletries that can automatically be reordered, and technology that makes caregiving easier. And what I love, and I know you guys will too, is that each and every product on Joe and Bella has been carefully selected by caregiving experts. Jimmy is giving an exclusive offer to listeners of this podcast. You can use promo code GATHER to receive 10% off your first purchase at joeandbella.com. That code is GATHER, GATHER, for 10% off at joeandbella.com. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.